Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and I love to talk about the important issue of police brutality, which is directly linked to mass incarceration. It's not just police brutality, it's racial profiling, all these things that put the microscope on black folks lead us to go into these ugly altercations with the police, which ultimately lead us to filling up the prisons in a country that incarcerates more of its citizens than any country in the world. And one of the great allies in this fight against the mass incarceration epidemic is Mr. Ken Williams. Ken Williams is the head of K. Will and Associates, and he is a wrongful death investigator. He's also a former cop with the Brockton Police Department, which he did for 20 years. And first, I want to ask my brother Ken, how you doing, man?
How you doing, Doctor? Thanks for having me today.
No problem. I hope I didn't flub up your introduction. Sometimes I mention your amazing credentials and I get it wrong, and apologize if I did any of that. But let's get to it, man. You're a tremendous ally in this fight against police brutality, police terror, mass incarceration. And I consider you to be an important ally because you are an experienced police officer, but also you're very precise in your thinking and you're very honest about what you saw as an officer and what you're fighting against. And and you've actually taken these battles to the courtroom. You've also work together with other officers and concerned citizens to actually put this into action. Now, can you tell me about some of the things that you've recently done in terms of organizing to battle against this really important problem?
Certainly, certainly. I'm now a member of the National Coalition of Law Enforcement Officers for Justice, Reform, and Accountability. We stand, it's short NCLEO. This is comprised of retired and former law enforcement officers where, we're bringing our experiences from law enforcement into the community so that we can show members of Congress who are now tasked with trying to look at reforming police. We can bring our experiences, collective experiences from across the nation and try to demonstrate to Congress, what are the best areas to try to attack discrimination so we can stop some of this nonsense that's going on out here where we have certain members in law enforcement that are acting inappropriately, abusing trust, and violating certain laws and rights. We've got to stop that.
Wow. Okay. So you formed this organization, the National Coalition of Law Enforcement Officers for Justice, Reform, and Accountability, which, excuse me, sounds like an amazing organization. It sounds like something that needs to be done. But it seems like there are a lot of people out here who are afraid of justice. They're afraid of reform. They're certainly afraid of accountability. Those seem to be pretty noble attributes. I mean, that sounds like something we should all aim for, particularly when you talk about law enforcement, because that's such an important job. It affects so many people's lives. Why are there people out there that fear the organization that you've created and what you guys are trying to do?
I mean, many people who are in law enforcement, there are two sides to the coin. There are many people in law enforcement. I receive calls all the time from officers who are active members in law enforcement today. They either read an article or they watch a video that you and I have done, and they themselves find empowerment in what we're doing today, which is speaking out. And we're trying to go and direct people on how to go and approach these things, to go and change what's happening as a culture and a custom inside those police agencies that harm citizens, because ultimately that's what it comes down to. You have a number of people who are afraid to speak up because they themselves, even though they see somebody like myself or other whistleblowers who are no longer on the force, but maybe we spoke out while we were on the force, no longer members of the force, they see us as being targeted, and they themselves fear being targeted. Now, there's the other side of the coin where, with police have an unbelievable amount of authority. And, if you're out there abusing and violating trust, abusing your authority, going against the grain of what your oath is, which is to protect and serve citizens, and you're also violating the Constitution, which when you raise your right hand and you become a police officer, you swear that you're going to, uphold the Constitution. You fear a group like this coming along and actually demonstrating on how to fix the problem, which means that you're going to identify these people who are inside these agencies that are committing these wrongdoings.
So you and I were talking off camera before our conversation began officially, and you were saying that one of the problems right now is that we kind of have this sort of this information and accountability bottleneck. That we've got hundreds, probably thousands of officers who have seen things happen that they know were wrong. They've seen people. They've seen people's civil rights violated. They've seen numerous atrocities occur by some of their fellow officers. But there's a concern about them speaking up and standing up. So I want to ask you, can you talk about that dynamic a little bit about why officers have so much trouble being able to really speak up for themselves? And because you've done that, right? You're technically kind of, I guess, what they might call a whistleblower. I don't know if that's a derogatory term or not. It's almost like calling somebody a snitch, but I think sometimes it's good. We need to be snitches. If something wrong is happening, we need to speak up to protect the people who've been harmed. So I use the word snitch in the most favorable way imaginable. But you had that courage to speak up. And so I guess maybe could you talk about why an officer might hesitate to do what you did, and maybe couch it in the context of your own experience, kind of dealing with the blue wall and those impediments to justice.
Certainly, certainly. I mean, before I became a police officer, I was a black man. Ever since I left law enforcement, I still check the mirror from time to time, but I'm still a black man. And one of the things that brought me into law enforcement, maybe I can use myself as an example for a moment. I remember as a young college student, one day coming home, I was going to college down in South Carolina, and I returned back to Boston, Massachusetts, and I just happened to get stopped by a black member of law enforcement. Um, I was just driving, he stopped me, and I had my girlfriend at the time with me sitting in the passenger seat of the car. He walked up to the window, asked me for my license and registration. I handed him the materials. He came back to the car a short time later and said, "Hey, Mr. Williams, your license um, is expired. You shouldn't be operating a motor vehicle right now." Here I am, at the time, a 19-year-old kid, just got back from college, wasn't aware that my license was suspended at the time because I hadn't renewed the license. I was in college at the time. I didn't know about it. He could have taken that experience. He could have said, "Hey, Mr. Williams, get out of the car. I'm going to lock you up." And that might have changed my whole trajectory on life just from that one encounter. After experiencing that myself, and back to the story real quick, the officer said, "Okay, sir, why don't you drive home, drive your girlfriend home, maybe go to court the next day, and take care of your license the next day that the registry is open." He didn't arrest me, right? So that experience taught me that A, police officers have unbelievable discretion. B, that they should be viewing people and assisting them and helping them through some of the mishaps that happen in life, whether it's done on purpose or by accident. Nonetheless, treat people so that they have a better outcome in life. So that led me to later on looking at the police profession, saying that I wanted to go and take some of that authority and that power and try to use it to go and help people like I was helped that day. And throughout my career, that's what I did. Now, some people take their authority and their power and they actually target other individuals. And they look at, instead of trying to help folks, they look at targeting certain members of society to go and promote their agenda. That agenda can range. It has a number of different ranges, from it being awful, discriminatory, to just being a jerk, unfortunately, sometimes, and not being accustomed to maybe using that type of authority wisely. Um, so when I look at law enforcement and I look at members in law enforcement who cannot find the courage to speak up, but yet and still there's some courageous people that run into a gun battle. There's some courageous people that will go out there and do all types of outrageously heroic deeds, but standing standing up to discrimination and standing up to racism and standing up to the biases that exist in society and standing up to other people about those things, I get a little bit taken aback by that because we should be looking at these long-standing problems in society related to color, related to biases that are directed at black and brown skinned people more than white people. And we should be trying to work together to resolve those issues by taking those individuals and holding them accountable and making them responsible for their views and for the laws that they violate and the rights that they violate. We all have to stand up and be a little bit more courageous in order to go and solve this problem.
Well, I think that's a very good point. I mean, I think that you and I both agree that there are a lot of very good police officers out here that I don't care what anybody says. I think that for many officers, if not most, joining the police force is a noble calling. You have to help people that you may not feel like helping. You have to care about people's problems that you didn't, problems that you didn't create. You have to do everything from put your life on the line in a gun battle to pulling a cat out of a tree, if that's what the situation calls for. And I think that it's important in this conversation as we talk about police reform to make sure that we commend those officers that are doing their jobs appropriately, and then also, as you mentioned, have this sort of call to courage for those whose conscience tells them that this is wrong. You can't let somebody hurt another human being at that level just because they're your colleague or your coworker. And then of course, obviously, you've got the whole blue wall issue in that it's not just a matter of being ostracized for speaking up, but literally, you've seen cases where officers' lives have been on the line from other officers because they identified them as quote unquote snitches or whatever the case may be. And so it's kind of a scary thing. I mean, confronting the police, it's like confronting the military because the power. My dad was a former cop, and he always said the people that have the power are the ones who have the guns. So that's what it comes down to. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the coalition NCLEO, and I want to make sure people write that down and remember this. NCLEO, that's the National Coalition of Law Enforcement Officers for Justice, Reform, and Accountability. You guys are having a town hall meeting pretty soon in Washington, D.C. Can you talk about that a little bit and what the objective is, who's invited and what you guys are seeking to accomplish?
Certainly on February 25th, next week, as a matter of fact, Wednesday, we have a town hall meeting from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Mount Carmel Baptist Church at 901, I'm sorry, 901 3rd Street, Northwest Washington, D.C. I'm going to say that one more time. Mount Carmel Baptist Church, 901 3rd Street in Northwest Washington. Before the town hall meeting, and our purpose is to go and speak with lawmakers. So we have a meeting with Congressman John Lewis at 3:30 p.m. that day, and then on between 10 and 11 a.m. we have a press conference somewhere in Capitol Hill. The arrangements are still being made on that. Our purpose is to come to a town hall meeting and have members of society, like we're members of society, everyone's a member of society, but members of society come together and discuss these things because people who have experiences in these things, as far as discrimination, wrongful arrest, abuse of authority, in order to have justice, reform, and accountability, those people are the experts. Their voices need to be heard, and they need to be recognized. Once we put the collective together as far as their voices, our experiences, and we bridge the gap and have communication flow, that's how we get power. And then that's how we resolve problems for reform and accountability.
All right. Well, I agree with you 100%, and I want to make sure people know for sure, how they can be involved in this. I encourage everyone who can attend to come out. When I look at you sent me some information about the agenda of the meeting, and what you guys are planning to do. And first and foremost, I want to make sure people write down the name of your coalition, the National Coalition of Law Enforcement Officers for Justice, Reform, and Accountability. I hope you will support that. And also, they are holding a town hall meeting on the 25th of February. And the address, I'm going to pull this up so I can repeat this. Let's see here. You know what? I don't know if the address is on the agenda you sent me. So let's see. Can you repeat it for me?
Certainly, it's the Mount Carmel Baptist Church at 901 3rd Street, Northwest Washington, D.C.
Okay, you said 901 3rd Street, right?
And I'm actually going to give a phone number because that might help out as well because there's a phone number here.
Okay.
202 842 3411. 202 842 3411 is the phone number of the church.
Okay. So I'm going to repeat that just because for some reason your audio is coming in a little bit not as crisp as we want, but it's okay. We'll still get the information. The phone number here is 202-842-3411. That's 202-842-3411. And I encourage you to call the number to support this effort, but to also and just go to the town hall meeting if you can. And then in addition to that, look up Ken Williams. Ken Williams is just he's not just a great guy, but he's also an expert at what he does. He understands wrongful death situations. He understands the police brutality, all these things. And your website, what is your website, Ken?
It's KWILL services.com. KWillservices.com.
Okay. His website is kwillservices.com. So I hope you'll go check him out. And that's pretty much it. So I want to say thank you very much for your work, Ken. It's
Thank you, Doctor.
good stuff. Absolutely, man. And everybody who's checking this out, who's watching and listening, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World. And let's remember that when we talk about this mass incarceration epidemic, we're dealing with a human rights violation. Of amazing proportions. The United States loves to talk about how other countries are violating the rights of its citizens. We wanted to go blow up Iraq because we said Saddam was doing these horrible things to his people. Well, guess what? Neither Saddam nor any of America's enemies, whether it's Iran or the people our frenemies in China, so to speak. All these places where we claim they love to tell us that these countries don't have freedom and all this other stuff. Well, guess what? They incarcerate far fewer people than we do in the United States. In fact, in Iran, they have far more people than we do, but they only incarcerate a fraction of their citizens, whereas we have learned or decided that we want to make money off of modern day slavery. And this mass incarceration epidemic is directly linked to what happens on the street, what happens with that first interaction with the cops, who's targeted by the cops, what happens after that targeting occurs. So we have to fight this racial profiling and police brutality issue at the core in order to deal with the mass incarceration epidemic, which is directly linked to the dissolution of the black family and the problems that we face over the last 40 years. So it all goes full circle. It's everybody's problem. It's not just a problem that belongs to other people. So I hope everybody will get involved. Thank you very much, Ken. I appreciate your time, man.
Thank you, Doctor.
All right. And everybody, until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.